At Thanksgiving dinner, my dad announced, "We're selling the family business. You're getting nothing." My siblings cheered while I just sat there smiling. He proudly said the buyer was paying $50 million. Everest Holdings. I let out a laugh and said, "Dad, I am Everest Holdings." And the entire room fell silent. My name is Morgan Adams. If you looked me up on LinkedIn right now, you'd see a polished headshot and a title that commands respect in Silicon Valley. But if you asked the people inside the house I was approaching, the sprawling, manicured estate in Brookline, Massachusetts, they would tell you I'm just the middle child. The quiet one. The one who liked computers more than people. The one who didn't matter. I'm 32 years old, and for 3 decades, I have been the invisible ghost haunting the hallways of the Adams software dynasty. We were the picture-perfect American success story, at least from the street view. The house was a colonial beast, 6 bedrooms, a heated indoor pool that smelled perpetually of chlorine and money, and a lawn so green it looked like it was spray-painted. My grandfather, Robert Adams, was a legend. He started Adams Software Solutions in his garage in 1978. He was a grinder, a man who built a regional powerhouse from nothing but a second-hand computer and grit. When he passed the baton to my father, Harold Adams, in 1995, the company was already a goldmine. Dad didn't build the empire, but he certainly knew how to wear the crown. Under his leadership, the company expanded, sure. It went from a $10 million family business to a $50 million enterprise. But along with that growth came an ego that suffocated everything in its orbit. Every holiday dinner, every birthday, every casual Tuesday barbecue was just another stage for Harold Adams to perform the monologue of his own genius. The Adams name meant success in Boston, and Dad made sure his children knew that we were lucky just to share his last name. There were 3 of us, but in Dad's eyes, there was really only one. Garrett. My older brother, now 38. Garrett was the golden child from the moment he drew his first breath. He was tall, charming in a superficial way, and completely inept when it came to business. He majored in communications, spent college rushing fraternities and nursing hangovers, and barely scraped a passing GPA. Yet, the day after he graduated, Dad handed him a vice president position like it was a graduation gift card. Garrett spent more time on his 40-foot boat or chasing waitresses than he did looking at spreadsheets, but Dad was convinced Garrett was the natural heir. It was blind nepotism at its finest. Then there was Megan, the baby. At 29, Megan had weaponized the family name into an online persona. She was a lifestyle influencer with hundreds of thousands of followers who tuned in to see her curated old money New England aesthetic. She posted photos of herself in our library or by the pool, captioning them with vague platitudes about hustle and legacy, despite having never worked a day in her life. She treated the company like a prop for her Instagram feed. And me? I was Morgan. Stuck in the middle. I was the anomaly. I was the only one who actually inherited Grandfather Robert's brain. I taught myself to code at 12 because computers were logical and my family was not. I built my first functioning app at 15. I went to MIT, studied computer science and business, and graduated summa cum laude. I didn't just understand the tech, I lived it. I saw the patterns, the future of the industry. But to my father, I was just a girl playing with toys. During business discussions at dinner, he would look right through me, directing his questions to Garrett, who usually had to check his phone to even know what day it was. My mother, Diane, was a tragedy in pearls. She came from old Boston money and handled conflict the way all Beacon Hill wives were taught to, by pouring another glass of Chardonnay and pretending the room wasn't on fire. She loved me, I think, but she loved her lifestyle more. She played peacekeeper, which in our house meant enabling Dad's narcissism and smoothing over his cruelty, so she didn't have to deal with the fallout. The breaking point, the moment that killed the daughter I was and birthed the woman I became, happened 10 years ago. I was 22, fresh out of MIT, buzzing with caffeine and ambition. I had spent 6 months developing a cloud-based integration solution. I knew, with mathematical certainty, that the industry was pivoting to the cloud. I had built a prototype that could have revolutionized our product line years before the competition caught on. I poured my soul into a business plan, market analysis, and technical specs. I begged Dad for a meeting. Not a daddy-daughter chat, but a formal pitch. He agreed, rolling his eyes, calling it a professional courtesy. I walked into that boardroom. It smelled of mahogany and stale coffee. The board members were all men in their 50s and 60s, Dad's golfing buddies. They watched me with polite, glazed-over eyes. I stood there in my best suit, heart hammering against my ribs, and I started my presentation. I was passionate. I was precise. I was right. 10 minutes in, Dad checked his Rolex. He let out a sigh that sounded like a tire deflating. He raised his hand, palm out, stopping me mid-sentence. "I think we've seen enough," he said. He gave me a tight, pitying smile. "Morgan, sweetheart. This is all very creative. It's cute, but it's completely impractical for a serious enterprise like ours. Our clients want stability, not experimental toys." He turned to the board, shrugging apologetically. "My daughter recently graduated. She's full of these academic theories. Now, shall we move on to actual business?" The humiliation was physical. It felt like he had slapped me. The board members chuckled, shuffling their papers, already forgetting I was there. I packed up my laptop with shaking hands, feeling the heat rise up my neck. I walked out of that room, and something inside me snapped. It wasn't a break, it was a hardening. That night, I packed 2 suitcases. I decided I wasn't just leaving, I was disappearing. I moved to San Francisco with $5,000 in a savings account and a chip on my shoulder the size of the Golden Gate Bridge. My parents barely looked up from their dinner when I told them. I heard Dad on the phone later, laughing to Mom. "Let her go, Diane. She'll be back when she runs out of money. It's just a tantrum." San Francisco was brutal. My apartment was a closet in a neighborhood where I had to step over questionable puddles to get to my front door. I survived on instant ramen and stale coffee. I worked 80-hour weeks, taking freelance coding gigs to keep the lights on, while every spare second went into building my own company. I created Everest Holdings, but I didn't put my name on it. I created a pseudonym, Emmy Stone. Emmy for Morgan Elizabeth. I wanted to know, for a fact, that if I succeeded or failed, it was on my own merit. No Adam's money. No connections. Just code and sweat. For 3 years, I was a ghost. Then, the breakthrough happened. The integration platform I had pitched to my father? I built a better version. A proprietary system that allowed legacy enterprise systems to talk to modern cloud services seamlessly. It was the missing link the industry was desperate for. Venture capital came knocking. I took the meetings, but I kept control. Over the next 7 years, Everest Holdings ate the market. I strategically acquired smaller tech companies. We grew to a $200 million valuation. I was Emmy Stone, the reclusive tech genius who rarely gave interviews. When I did, I used a proxy or did them via email. My family had no idea. During our rare, strained holiday calls, I kept it vague. "Work is fine," I'd say. "Just doing some consulting." Dad never pressed. He had already decided I was a failure, so my reality didn't matter to him. But I was watching. God, was I watching. For the last 18 months, I had been systematically circling Atom's software like a shark in deep water. I knew their financials better than their CFO did. I knew they were bleeding. Their tech was outdated, their clients were leaving for more modern competitors I owned. I started buying up their debt. I bought majority stakes in their suppliers. 6 months ago, I had my CFO send an anonymous acquisition offer to Atom's software. It was a lifeline, a partnership that would have saved them. Dad rejected it. He didn't even bring it to the board. His ego couldn't handle the idea of needing help. So, I decided to take the choice away from him. That brings us to this week. Thanksgiving. The ultimate American cliché. I was in my corner office in Soma, looking out at the Bay Bridge, when my assistant dropped the travel itinerary on my desk. Your jet is fueled and waiting for Tuesday, 11 a.m., she said. I looked at the folder. It contained the final contracts. Thanks, Sarah. I'm handling this one alone. My best friend Isabella, who had seen me through the ramen years, called me that night. Are you sure you want to do this? You're walking into the lion's den, Morgan. You haven't seen them in 2 years. I have to see his face, Izzy, I told her, staring at my reflection in the window. I need to be in the room when he realizes he's not the king anymore. I packed differently this time. No hoodies, no jeans. I packed armor. A tailored Armani suit. A Chanel dress for dinner. Louis Vuitton heels. A Patek Philippe watch that cost more than my brother's car. I wasn't going back as the daughter who needed money. I was going back as the woman who could buy and sell them. The flight was smooth, 5 hours of luxury that felt surreal compared to the middle seats and coach I used to endure. When we landed at the private airfield outside Boston, a black Bentley was waiting on the tarmac. As we drove through the familiar, leafy streets of Brookline, a cold calm washed over me. When I walked up those steps, Mom answered the door. She bypassed the housekeeper, eager for a distraction. She looked fragile, her smile tight. Morgan. Darling. She hugged me, enveloping me in a cloud of expensive floral perfume and the faint, sharp scent of midday white wine. She pulled back, her eyes scanning me. You look different. Is that a Rolex? Patek Philippe, actually, I said, stepping inside. Good to see you, Mom. The house was exactly as I remembered, imposing, cold, and beautiful. Your father is in his study, Mom fluttered. He's been very busy. Some big deal. Very hush-hush. I walked to the study. The door was ajar. I didn't wait for permission. I knocked once and walked in. Dad was at his massive oak desk, glasses perched on his nose. He looked up, annoyance flashing across his face before he recognized me. Morgan. You made it. He stood, giving me a brief, awkward hug. He gestured to the chair, the visitor's chair. Trip was okay? Smooth, I said, remaining standing. I flew private. Saves time. He paused, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. Private? That's expensive. Business is good, I said flatly. Before he could probe, his phone rang. He waved me off. Important call. Excuse me. I walked out, but not before glancing at his desk. There it was. The acquisition proposal from Everest Holdings. The logo I had designed on a napkin in a coffee shop 7 years ago was staring up at him. I went upstairs to my old room. It was a time capsule. Debate trophies, coding awards, sci-fi novels. It was a shrine to a girl who tried so hard to be impressive that she burnt herself out. I freshened up and went downstairs to find the rest of the circus. Garrett was in the living room, nursing a scotch at 3 p.m. He had gained weight, his face soft from easy living. Well, he sneered. The prodigal sister. Still playing with computers out west. Something like that, I said. How's the vice presidency treating you? Grind never stops, he said, raising his glass, totally unironic. He introduced his new girlfriend, Amber, a 24-year-old yoga instructor who looked terrified to touch anything in the room. Then Megan burst in, phone raised high, ring light attached. Morgan's here. Family reunion content. She air-kissed me, checking her screen to make sure the lighting was flattering. You look expensive. Sis. Did you find a rich boyfriend? No, I said, stepping out of her frame. Just working. The pre-dinner hours were excruciating. Mom vibrated with anxiety. Dad was checking his emails every 30 seconds, and Garrett was bragging about a client dinner that I knew for a fact was just him expensing a night at a strip club. I had seen the audit reports. Finally, dinner. The dining room was a masterpiece of intimidation. Mahogany table, Wedgwood china, sterling silver candelabras. I was seated at the far end, the kids' table spot, practically in a different zip code from Dad. Garrett, of course, was at his right hand. We went through the motions. The butternut squash soup, the turkey, the sides. Dad carved the bird like he was performing surgery, while Megan provided commentary for her Instagram live. Here's Daddy, keeping the tradition alive. Then came the toasts. Garrett stood up, swaying slightly. I'm thankful for another record-breaking year at Adams Software, he lied. And for my new boat, the Adams Legacy. Megan thanked her followers. Mom thanked the wine, essentially. When it was my turn, I didn't stand. I just held my glass. I'm thankful for lessons, I said, my voice clear. I'm thankful for the realization that sometimes, rejection is the only way to find the right path. And that being underestimated is the greatest competitive advantage you can have. Dad frowned, sensing a change in the atmosphere, but he brushed it off. He stood up, tapping his knife against his crystal glass. The sharp dings silenced the room. I have an announcement, he said, puffing up. He looked like a general addressing his troops. As you know, I have dedicated my life to this company. But the market is changing. I have decided to sell Adams Software. The reaction was instantaneous. Garrett choked on his wine. What? Dad, you can't be serious. Megan gasped, hand to her mouth. But Daddy, what about the legacy? My personal brand is tied to being an heiress. Dad held up a hand. The deal is finalized tomorrow. And there is a second part to this announcement. The proceeds from the sale will not be distributed to you children. Your mother and I are setting up a charitable foundation. Garrett slammed his fist on the table, rattling the silverware. This is my birthright. I've given 10 years to this place. You've given 10 years of lunch breaks, Dad snapped. The buyer is a firm called Everest Holdings. They offered $50 million. It's done. The room was chaos. Shouting, crying, accusations. And in the middle of the storm, I sat perfectly still, taking a small bite of pecan pie. Mom noticed. She looked at me, her eyes clearing for a second. Morgan? You don't seem surprised. The table quieted down. Everyone turned to look at me, the forgotten child at the end of the table. I wiped my mouth with a linen napkin and set it down. Actually, I said, I just have one question. I looked directly at my father. Who is the buyer? Dad smirked, happy to be the one with the knowledge. A very aggressive, successful firm from San Francisco. Everest Holdings. They're sharks. I took a sip of water. I let the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable. Dad, I said softly. I am Everest Holdings. For a solid 10 seconds, nobody breathed. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Dad stared at me, his mouth slightly open. Garrett looked like he'd been hit with a shovel. Megan, to her credit, kept the camera rolling. What? Garrett whispered. I'm Emmy Stone, I said. Morgan Elizabeth Stone. That's the name I've been using professionally for 10 years. I founded Everest Holdings. I built it to a $200 million valuation. And tomorrow morning, I am acquiring Adams Software. Dad laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. This is a joke. Emmy Stone is a recluse. A genius. You're my daughter. I reached into my Chanel bag and pulled out a slim, platinum card case. I slid a business card down the mahogany table. It spun and stopped right in front of him. Emmy Stone, CEO, Everest Holdings. I own controlling interests in your 3 biggest suppliers, Dad. Nexus, DataStream, and TechCore. I bought your debt last month. And frankly, your company is failing. You've lost 22% of your market share because you refuse to modernize. I'm not buying it to kill it. I'm buying it to save it from you. Dad picked up the card, his hands trembling. You spied on us? I did my due diligence, I corrected. It's public record, mostly. But yes, I've been watching. The deal is off. Dad roared, standing up. I will not be humiliated by my own child. I'll fight this. You can't, I said calmly. The contracts are signed. The board approved it unanimously this morning. If you back out, I will sue you for breach of contract, and given the financial state of the company, you will lose everything. Personal assets included. Garrett pointed a shaking finger at me. You planned this. You planned this whole dinner just to embarrass us. I planned it for Thanksgiving because I knew you'd all be here, I said. And because 10 years ago, at this table, Dad told me my ideas were cute while he handed you a VP title you didn't earn. I'm your father. Dad shouted. You have to choose, Morgan. Right now. You can be my daughter, or you can be the CEO who stole my company. You cannot be both. I stood up slowly. That's where you're wrong. I am both. I always have been. You just never bothered to look. Dad turned purple. Get out. Everyone out. I need to call my lawyers. He stormed out of the room, slamming the door so hard the china rattled. Mom looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Morgan, are you really? Is it true? Yes, Mom. 200 million, she whispered. Yes. She let out a sob that was half laugh. And I was worried about you paying rent. She got up and followed Dad. The dining room emptied, leaving me with the cold turkey and the flickering candles. I felt a strange hollowness. I had one, but it didn't feel like a victory parade. It felt like an autopsy. I went up to my room. I sat on my childhood bed, staring at the wall. A few minutes later, the door banged open. Garrett. He was drunker now and angry. You think you're so smart, he hissed. Little Miss Secret Agent. Go to bed, Garrett. You're stealing my inheritance. I stood up and walked over to him. Garrett, sit down. Don't tell me what to do. Sit down, I said, my voice dropping an octave into my CEO voice. He sat. I've audited the books, I said quietly. I know about the embezzlement. The fake vendor accounts. The $300,000 you siphoned off for gambling debts. His face drained of color. You can't prove that. I have the IP logs, Garrett. I have the bank routing numbers. I know you did it from your office computer on Tuesday nights. He started to shake. Are you going to send me to jail? I should, I said. But I won't. Because despite everything, you're my brother. But here is the deal. You resign. Tomorrow. You pay back the money, I don't care how you get it, sell the boat. And if you want a future in this family, you enroll in an MBA program and actually learn how to do the job. Otherwise, I hand the file to the DA. He looked at me terrified. He nodded, mutely, and left the room. 10 minutes later, a soft knock. Megan. She came in, wiping mascara from her cheeks. She sat on the bed next to me. So, she said, sniffing. You're a tycoon. I guess so. That's actually kind of badass, she admitted. I mean, Dad is losing his mind, but you beat him. I looked at her. Is that all you care about? No, she said, shifting gears. I was thinking. You need a rebrand for Atom Software, right? It's dusty. Old white guy energy. I raised an eyebrow. I can help, she said. I know social. I know how to spin this. The rise of the female tech heiress. Family legacy reinvented. I can run the socials. For real. Not just for my feed. I studied her. For the first time, I saw a spark. Of genuine ambition, not just vanity. You'd have to actually work, Megan. Deadlines. KPIs. No posting confidential info. I can do it, she said. I'm tired of asking Dad for allowance. I want to make my own money. Okay, I said. We'll try it. Probationary period. But you report to the CMO, not me. She grinned. Deal. I didn't sleep much that night. I listened to Dad pacing in the study below me. The next morning, the sun rose over the frost-covered lawn. I dressed in my suit, drank a black coffee, and went to the study. Dad was there. He looked wrecked. He hadn't slept. He was staring out the window. My lawyers say you're right, he said without turning around. Ironclad. You own us. I sat on the edge of his desk. I'm not here to gloat, Dad. He turned. Why? Why the secrecy? Why not just come to me? Because you wouldn't have listened, I said. You never listened. I had to become undeniable before you would even look at me. He slumped into his chair. I thought I was protecting you. The business world, it's wolves. I thought you were too soft. I'm not soft, Dad. I'm the wolf. He looked at the acquisition papers. What happens now? Do you fire me? No, I said. I'm making you chairman emeritus. You keep an office. You keep your salary. You advise on legacy clients. But I run the show. The strategy, the tech, the hiring, that's me. And Garrett is out until he gets an education. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in 32 years. He saw the lines around my eyes, the set of my jaw, the watch on my wrist. He didn't see his little girl. He saw a peer. You outmaneuvered me, he whispered. A strange expression crossed his face. Pride. You built a $200 million company from nothing? From nothing, I confirmed. Just ramen and code. He let out a long breath. Your grandfather, Robert, he would have loved this. He would have loved that you beat me. I learned from the best, I said, offering an olive branch. I watched you build this place. I just want to bring it into the 21st century. He hesitated, then stood up and extended his hand. Welcome to Adams Software, Madam CEO. I shook his hand. It was firm, respectful. 6 months have passed since that Thanksgiving. The transition was rocky, but we made it. The headquarters has been renovated, open floor plans, better lighting, no more mahogany dungeons. Garrett is halfway through his first semester of business school. He's struggling, but he's actually trying. He sold the boat. We talk once a week, and for the first time, it's not him bragging, it's him asking questions. Megan is crushing it. She rebranded our consumer-facing division and engagement is up 400%. She's annoying, but she's effective. And Dad? He comes in on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have lunch. He tells me stories about the old days, and I tell him about the cloud architecture. He still has an ego. He still tries to interrupt me, but when I hold up a hand, he stops. He respects the chair I sit in. Mom has sobered up mostly. She started a charity initiative with the foundation money. She told me she wants to help girls who feel invisible. I stood in the lobby yesterday, looking at the timeline of the company on the wall. There's a photo of Grandfather Robert. A photo of Dad. And now, a photo of me. I realized that revenge is a cheap fuel. It burns hot and fast, but it burns you out. What I have now isn't revenge. It's reconciliation. But it's reconciliation on my terms. I didn't break my family to destroy them. I broke them so we could reset the bones properly. For anyone watching this who feels like the invisible child, the black sheep, the one they underestimate, let them. Let them sleep on you. Work in the dark. Build your empire in the shadows. Because the day you step into the light, fully formed and undeniable, is the best feeling in the world. It's not about proving them wrong, it's about proving yourself right. You'd think that after the takeover, after the big dramatic reveal, at Thanksgiving, and after signing the papers that officially made me my father's boss, the credits would roll and we'd all live happily ever after. But real life isn't a movie, and business, especially family business, doesn't work that way. The truth is, the day after you win the war is when the real work begins. And let me tell you, the first 6 months of actually running Adams Everest Technologies made the hostile takeover look like a spa day. If you thought the Thanksgiving dinner was tense, try sitting in a Monday morning strategy meeting with a room full of 60-year-old men who have been listening to your father for 3 decades, and now have to take orders from a 32-year-old woman they still remember seeing in braces. The atmosphere in the office those first few months was thick enough to chew on. We had divided the building into 2 psychological zones. On the left, you had the Everest team, my people. They were young, hungry, dressed in hoodies and sneakers, drinking kombucha, and talking about API integration. On the right, you had the Adams old guard. Suits, ties, scheduled lunch breaks at exactly noon, and a palpable resentment toward the invaders. The friction wasn't just quiet, it was loud. And at the center of it was a man named Frank. Frank was the VP of sales, one of Dad's oldest friends. He was the kind of guy who closed deals on the golf course and thought cloud computing was a passing fad. About 3 months in, I introduced a new CRM system, a customer relationship management tool that tracked every call, every email, every metric. It was standard procedure for Everest, but for the Adams team, it was like I had asked them to speak Martian. I walked past the break room one afternoon and heard Frank holding court. "It's ridiculous," he was booming, not even bothering to lower his voice. "She's tracking our bathroom breaks. It's micromanagement. The girl doesn't understand that sales is about relationships, not data entry. She's playing CEO with Daddy's money." I stopped. My blood ran cold. The old Morgan, the invisible middle child, would have kept walking. She would have gone to her office, closed the door, and cried. She would have called her mom. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was the one signing Frank's paycheck. I pushed the door open. The room went silent. Frank looked at me, holding his coffee mug, a smirk playing on his lips. He didn't look scared, he looked defiant. He thought he was untouchable because he and Dad had played poker every Friday night since 1995. "Frank," I said, my voice steady. "In my office." "Now." He rolled his eyes, actually rolled them, at his subordinates before following me out. When we got to my office, Dad's old office, now stripped of the mahogany and replaced with glass and sleek metal, I didn't offer him a seat. "I heard what you said," I told him. "I was just venting, Morgan," he said, using my first name with a patronizing lilt. "Look, your new systems are cute, but they slow us down. I bring in the revenue. I don't need to log my calls." "You brought in revenue in 2010, Frank," I said, pulling up a dashboard on my monitor. "But for the last 4 quarters, your numbers are down 15%. You're losing clients to competitors who use data to anticipate needs. You're not selling, you're coasting." He flushed red. "I've been with this company for 20 years. My father isn't the CEO," I cut him off. "I am. And here is the reality. You have 2 choices. You can adopt the new system, undergo the training, and actually work for your commission. Or you can pack your box. Today." He stared at me shocked. "You wouldn't dare. I'm family, practically. This isn't a family gathering, Frank. It's a business. And right now, you're a liability." He quit on the spot. He stormed out, called my father immediately, and tried to stir up a rebellion. And this was the first real test of my relationship with Dad post-takeover. Dad came into my office an hour later. He looked tired. He sat in the chair opposite me, the one I used to sit in when I was begging for his attention. "Frank called me," Dad said. "He's pretty upset, Morgan. He says you humiliated him." I didn't look up from my laptop. "I held him accountable, Dad. There's a difference. His numbers were trash, and he was poisoning the culture. He had to go." Dad sighed, rubbing his temples. "He's godfather to Garrett. We go way back. You could have handled it softer." I stopped typing and looked at him. "Softer? Like you handled me when I pitched my ideas? Like you handled the market changes that nearly bankrupted us?" "Soft doesn't save companies, Dad. Competence does." He held my gaze for a long moment. I was terrified he was going to yell, to pull rank, to try and use his chairman emeritus title to overrule me. But he didn't. He just nodded slowly. "You're right," he said quietly. He was dead weight. I didn't have the heart to do it. Maybe that's why we were failing. That was a turning point. It wasn't a hug, it wasn't a tearful apology, but it was respect. And in business, respect is worth more than love. But while the office was stabilizing, the family side of things was still a minefield. Specifically, Garrett. Garrett was in Boston, attending the executive MBA program I had forced him into as a condition of not prosecuting him for embezzlement. He had gone from being a VP with a corner office and an expense account to a 38-year-old student sitting in lecture halls with 24-year-olds, actually having to study. One Tuesday night, around 11 p.m., my phone rang. It was Garrett. I can't do this, he slurred. He sounded exhausted, maybe a little drunk. Garrett, are you okay? I sat up in bed, switching on the lamp. I'm staring at a spreadsheet for a finance class, he said, his voice cracking. I don't understand it, Morgan. I don't get the ratios. Everyone else in the class gets it instantly. I feel like an idiot. I'm a 38-year-old idiot. You're not an idiot, I said. You're just out of practice. You haven't had to use that part of your brain in a decade because Dad handed everything to you. Why are you doing this to me? He asked. Why didn't you just fire me? This is torture. Because, I said, softening my tone. I know you're smart, Garrett. I remember when we were kids, you used to beat me at chess. You have the brain, you just never had the discipline. If I fired you, you'd just go find another easy way out. I want you to win for real. There was silence on the other end. I missed the boat weekend with the guys, he mumbled. I stayed in the library. Good, I said. Send me the spreadsheet. I'll walk you through the ratios. We spent the next 2 hours on FaceTime. Me, the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, teaching my older brother basic corporate finance at 1 a.m. It was humbling for him and, honestly, it was healing for me. For the first time, he wasn't the golden child looking down on me. He was just a guy asking his little sister for help. By the time we hung up, he wasn't drunk anymore. He sounded determined. Thanks, Morgan, he said. Really? I won't let you down. Don't do it for me, I told him. Do it so you don't have to feel like a fraud anymore. That was the quiet battle. The loud battle came a month later, and it almost broke us. We faced a crisis that no amount of internal restructuring could fix. One of our biggest legacy clients, Global Logistics Corp., threatened to walk. They were a massive account, about 15% of the old Adams software revenue. Their contract was up for renewal, and a competitor, Techstream, was courting them aggressively. Techstream was slick. They were telling Global Logistics that Adams Software was a dinosaur and that the merger with Everest was just putting lipstick on a pig. We had an emergency war room meeting. Me, Dad, the new VP of Sales, a sharp woman named Sarah I had hired from Google, and Megan. Yes, Megan. Megan had been crushing it on social media, rebranding us as a heritage tech company. But this was a B2B crisis. Dad was pacing the room, his face purple. I need to take Jim out to dinner, Dad insisted. Jim was the CEO of Global Logistics. I need to take him to the steakhouse, get a bottle of the 82 Bordeaux, and remind him of the good old days. That's how we fix this. Dad, Jim retired last month, I said, looking at my tablet. The new CEO is a woman named Elena. She's 45, she runs marathons, and she doesn't care about your Bordeaux. She cares about efficiency. Well, someone needs to charm her. Dad shouted. We're going to lose the contract, Morgan. This is on your watch. We're not going to charm her, I said, standing up. We're going to show her the data. We're going to show her the integration roadmap. She won't listen to a pitch deck. Dad yelled. This is a relationship business. It was, I shot back. Now it's a results business. I turned to Megan. Meg, pull up the sentiment analysis on Global Logistics. What are their employees complaining about online regarding their current software? Dad scoffed. You're asking the Instagram girl? Megan didn't flinch. She tapped her iPad. Actually, Dad, she said, her voice crisp. I crawled their employee forums and LinkedIn comments. Their warehouse managers hate the current inventory latency. They're complaining that it takes 3 minutes to update stock levels. They're losing shipping time. I nodded. Excellent. Sarah, how fast is our new Everest integration? Real-time, Sarah said. Sub-second latency. Okay, I said. That's the pitch. We don't sell them loyalty. We sell them speed. We show them that leaving us will cost them efficiency. Dad sat down, looking between me and Megan like he was seeing aliens. You think that's enough? I know it is, I said. The meeting with Elena was 3 days later. I brought Sarah and, to everyone's surprise, I brought Dad. But I gave him strict instructions. You are there to represent stability and history. You shake hands, you smile, and you let me talk numbers. We walked into their headquarters. Elena was sharp, direct, and clearly skeptical. I'll be honest, she said. Techstream is offering us a significant discount. Why should we stay with a company that's in the middle of an identity crisis? I didn't flinch. Because Techstream can't do this. I pulled up the demo. I used the data Megan had found. I showed her a simulation of her own warehouse floor. Your people are waiting 3 minutes for a refresh. With our new Everest patch, that drops to 0. That saves you 400 man-hours a week. That pays for our contract in 3 months. The discount Techstream is offering is cheap because their tech is slow. Do you want cheap or do you want fast? Elena looked at the screen. She looked at me. Then she looked at Dad. Harold, she said. Is this real? Can you actually deliver this? The room went quiet. This was the moment. Dad could have undermined me. He could have tried to pivot to a story about the good old days. He could have tried to be the hero. He looked at the data. Then he looked at me. I saw him swallow his pride, a physical lump in his throat. Elena, Dad said, his voice firm. I built this company on promises. But my daughter built her company on proof. If Morgan says it works, it works. She's the smartest operator I've ever known. I felt my breath hitch. He had never, in my entire life, said anything like that about me to anyone, let alone a client. Elena signed the renewal. 3 years. A 20% upsell. Walking out to the car, Dad was quiet. We got into the back seat of the town car. The adrenaline was fading, leaving just the exhaustion. You were good in there, Dad said, staring out the window. You were too, I said. Thank you. For backing me up. He chuckled, a dry sound. Didn't have much of a choice. The numbers were right. Megan found that data. She did. Huh, he grunted. Maybe she's not just looking at herself in the mirror all day. She's smart, Dad. We all are. We just needed you to get out of the way so we could show you. He winced, but he took it. Fair enough. That night, we had a family dinner. Not Thanksgiving. Just a Tuesday. Garrett drove down from Boston because he had passed his finance midterm with a B+ and wanted to celebrate. Megan was there, actually wearing sweatpants for once, showing Mom some engagement metrics on her phone. Mom was pouring water, not wine. She looked clearer, lighter. She had spent the day at the foundation, reviewing grant applications for girls in STEM. I found a candidate today, Mom told me as we passed the bread. A girl from Dorchester. 16. Brilliant coder, but she's working 2 jobs to help her family. I want to give her a full scholarship. Do it, I said. Put her in the internship program at Everest too. I already did, Mom smiled. We sat there, eating lasagna. It wasn't perfect. Dad still corrected Garrett's table manners. Megan still checked her phone too much. I was still exhausted, checking emails under the table. But the toxicity, that heavy, suffocating cloud that used to hang over us, was gone. Garrett raised his glass of sparkling water. To the B+, he grinned. And to Morgan for not letting me quit. Dad raised his glass too. He looked around the table, his eyes lingering on each of us. To the new Adams era, he said gruffly. I suppose it's not terrible. We all laughed. It was the best compliment we were going to get. Later that night, I went out to the pool house. I sat by the water, looking at the reflection of the moon. My phone buzzed. A notification from LinkedIn. Harold Adams posted, proud to see the next generation taking Adams Everest to new heights. Leadership isn't about holding on, it's about knowing when to hand over the reins to someone better. My daughter, Morgan, is the future. I stared at the screen, tears pricking my eyes. He hadn't said it to my face, he probably never would, but he told the world. I realized then that I hadn't just bought a company. I had bought a second chance for my family. It cost me millions of dollars, years of my life, and a lot of heartache. But looking at where we are now, it was a bargain. So, here's the lesson for anyone still listening. We love the stories about the girl boss who destroys her enemies. We love the revenge narrative. But the real story, the hard story, is what comes after. It's about the boring meetings. It's about the difficult conversations with your brother at 1 a.m. It's about firing your dad's friends because they're dragging you down. It's about realizing that your parents are flawed people who made mistakes and deciding whether to punish them forever or help them grow. I chose to help them grow. Not because they deserved it, but because I did. I deserved a family that worked. So I built one the same way I built my software, line by line, bug by bug, until it finally functioned. If you're stuck in a family dynamic where you feel small, don't wait for them to change. They won't. Go out, get big, get strong, and then come back and change the dynamic yourself. And hey, if you need a cloud integration platform that actually works, or a brand ambassador who knows her demographics, or even a finance guy who is really trying his best, you know who to call. If you've ever had to fight for your place at your own family table, drop a comment below. I want to hear your story. How did you handle the people who were supposed to believe in you but didn't? Did you burn the bridge, or did you buy the bridge? Hit that like button if you believe in playing the long game, and subscribe to see how we turn this legacy company into a future titan. My name is Morgan Adams, and thanks for listening to my story.